Truck 1, Ambulance 1, Medic 1, showing all units en route to
Dispatch ambulance 7, primary code 3 with 1.
Welcome, Melanie Hall. So today we're doing the Going Interior podcast. This is a podcast about doing hard jobs and living life well. So we'll share some ideas. This is a collaborative tool to help us learn from one another, share some ideas on overcoming challenges, finding joy and meaning in our work. I'm your host, Jamie Cavanaugh, and my guest today is executive coach and business consultant Melanie Hall. Melanie was a facilitator at a supervisor training that I took through the city recently, and I found her just super knowledgeable and helpful. So appreciate you coming in here. Her specialty is in an area of leadership that many of us find ourselves in as first responders, but we're not always properly equipped or trained to handle these supervisory and then leadership responsibilities. So I'm excited for you to share some of the tools that you've developed to help us do our jobs more effectively. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I took a quote from your website, if I might.
Okay.
All right. It said, it was less important for you to know what you wanted to be and more important to chase what you wanted to do. You wanted to help people, real people with real needs and meaningful ways.
That sounds like me.
All right.
I think I was always envious in some ways of someone who was a firefighter or someone who was a doctor or someone who knew from an early age that this is the job role and title that I want to have. I never had that clarity. I just knew that I wanted to help people. And came to accept that some people are more wired to weave in and out of different industries because they are searching more for a role as opposed to a job. And so, that being said, I have a lengthy resume. My parents would say it's way too long. I should cut some out of it. But I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in education, I've worked in philanthropy, small business, lots of different sectors, and just always really sought out positions that allowed me to be supportive of others.
Yeah, that's interesting. You talk about helping all those folks. You're getting to help, clearly, firefighters, paramedics in this training class, as well as many, many others at the city. So hopefully that's gratifying. What drove you to this point where now you're primarily doing consulting, coaching, that sort of thing, right, as your main job?
My bread and butter.
Yeah.
I think it's always been something that I eventually wanted to do. I got there faster than I meant to. I did a healthcare clinic startup about 2.5 years before the pandemic hit. And so to be a brand new clinical setting with new staff and weather the pandemic was a lot.
Yeah.
And so I found myself just totally burned out.
Yeah.
And so I work for a nonprofit board, and I gave them 3 months notice and said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I can't physically keep doing this.
Sure.
And so they were kind and gave me 6 months to rest and recover. And during that time, I went back to school and became a certified executive coach.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where I am. I've been doing it for about 2 years now.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
And that is actually one of the questions I was going to get to. Nice segue. Thank you. Just what have you learned? How do we, and what do you teach now? How do we keep from getting there? Because I think you're teaching a lot of folks who are, hard chargers, who want to achieve and want to, be the leaders for their people also and really extend themselves. How do they keep doing it day in, day out? What strategies do you employ?
I think it would be super easy if it was an on-off button, but it's not. People who are ambitious, their ambition can be what leads to burnout.
Absolutely.
People who are helpers, EMS, first responders, that desire to be helpful and supportive can also be what causes you not to be able to take care of yourself, to take it too far. And so it's not an on and off button, it's more of a moderation. And finding that balance is not a static, you've arrived. It's something that you're always recalibrating with each day. And so that's the journey I'm on right now, is figuring out how to seek out that balance in every day.
Yeah. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
I look forward to keeping hearing about it. And
Yeah.
I know that's something that a lot of people who listen to this, they feel deeply. That's a challenge for folks, for sure, in the modern era. We've got our cell phones chasing us home. It's hard to turn off, anymore. Like, we are at work a lot of the time.
And I think we've come to celebrate the idea of being busy as a society. And I'm not sure that that's serving us well in the long term. It's how many different commitments can we hold? How much can we squeeze into a fixed amount of time? Colorado has always been known for a great place to play, and we work hard at playing. So we squeeze it into the weekends, then we squeeze it into the week. And that optimizing your life at every point has a cost.
Yeah. So one point I wanted to draw out, you gave a real practical example in class. Do I need to say, I have my email on my phone now, and many people probably do, as well as text message, the 1,000 ways to get a hold of me. Do I need to return emails immediately when I'm not at work? Is that something that you feel like is a reasonable expectation? And is there another way to do that?
I think it's about figuring out what is within doable over the long term. Can we do it for a period of time? Yeah. Can we do it probably a little bit longer than that? Yeah. But indefinitely, the answer is usually no. So I think my concern with how we work today is that we're not always setting up sustainable structures. And that requires both the agency and the employees and the staff to figure out what healthy boundaries look like. We had kind of responsiveness expectations. If you don't set them out, a lot of times what people believe is as soon as possible and as much as possible. That's the expectation. When should you reply? As soon as you can. But when we were able to clarify for the whole staff what that looked like, and I kind of set that precedent myself. If you text me, I will text you back within 2 hours. If you call me, I will call you back within 24 hours, and and emails are this many business days. And so people came to know what reasonable responsiveness looked like. And then we had a little bit more grace built into how we communicated.
And you were consistent on those things and followed through with what you said you were going to do, even though it may have taken you a couple days to respond to an email. They knew it wasn't just going to fall off the table.
Exactly.
And be gone from your mind. It wasn't in your trash bin, so they could rest easy and know that it was going to be handled, and to take a chill pill.
And I think with clear expectations is the precursor to accountability.
Okay.
And just like you were talking about, when we have those expectations and we deliver on them, then we create accountability, which leads to trust. And trust is kind of the golden pillar of any organization's culture. And so if we deliver on what we promise on, then we start to create that.
How do we spend our time throughout the day acknowledging that people are super duper busy? What tools do you have to evaluate, what do I need to be doing right now? I'm busy, and I have I have Santa's list from a 9-year-old of to-do list that's so long that there's no way I'm going to get it done today.
Right.
What do I do?
Give up and go home. That's not
still
good advice.
here. Sorry.
Well, the to-do list serves us up until we can no longer accomplish everything that's asked of us. And that tends to happen very quickly, especially if you move into a supervisory role. There's just more than can be done. And so that's often why people reach out for coaching. One of the primary reasons is they say something like, help me make time. Well, if I could make time, I would bottle it and probably be a millionaire, right? No one makes time. Managing time, there's usually some low-hanging fruit that people can create some efficiencies. One that comes to mind as you talk about it is deciding in the moment is never effective. A simple strategy is you plan your week the Friday before. And so then you have a clear idea of your direction as you come in the door Monday morning. That's an easy one. But the real value to be had is learning out how to value time. A good exercise to do is to identify what is your highest and best use. What are the handful of things that you in your role are the only one that can do? And then those should drop into your schedule as a priority in your most productive time of the day. And that's usually where people fight with time, is that they feel this angst of, I'm not doing the highest and best. I'm not spending my time on the important things. I'm just fighting, I shouldn't say, can I say this in the fire department? Going from one fire to the next.
Absolutely.
That might be your highest and best.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they feel like they're rushing from one urgent thing to the next.
Yeah.
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 And then you find yourself as a leader doing those things in the evening or Sunday afternoon, and you're borrowing out of your personal time to get your priority items taken care of.
Do I even need to do everything on my to-do list? Is that a thing? Because at some point that it just becomes too much.
I think only you can answer that. I think a little bit of experience and wisdom gained from it is I realized that I didn't need to fight every fire I did. That some certain circumstances just burn themselves out. And they may not be worth the resources and time and attention to deal with it. There's been threats, but I've never actually seen someone fired for having a messy desk. You know, those are the things that maybe that doesn't have to be done. But the thinking about staffing of your agency 3 to 5 years from now, that does have to be done. And so it's understanding the priorities of where your time is best spent.
You had a interesting graphic, and I'm going to have to look for it in our binder, but it was basically 4 squares too that was drawing out, is this urgent or is this important, right?
Yeah.
And so the not urgent, not important, potentially I could just delete that part too, right?
Yes.
And then if it wasn't super important, maybe I could delegate that if I am in a position where I can do some of those things, or there's a better person to do it. And then deciding between those top 2 became sort of the crux, I guess.
Right. It's called the Eisenhower matrix, and it's understanding the difference between urgency and importance. Urgency is the fires that spring up. Urgency is almost always brought to you by others. It's, we need to handle this. So-and-so isn't here today. What are we going to do about this? This broke. It's all the things, that's a good way to talk about it. Important are the things that it's like making a deposit into your savings account. You can more easily put it off because it doesn't have an immediate cost to you. But it usually has a huge cost if it's not dealt with.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me about the difference between a boss and a leader then. Where are we spending our time?
I think the way that I like to think about it is that there's a difference between a father and a dad. People are put into boss roles or supervisory positions through a title. But just like a father doesn't make a great dad, a boss doesn't make a great leader. And we actually see great examples of leadership in non-supervisory roles. People that are leading from whatever position they're in. So I don't think that they're synonymous, but there's costs if you have the role of boss and you're not showing good leadership.
I'm going to bring out this quote, another quote from you.
I feel like
this might have been today. Leadership is inspiring others to perform. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Certainly shifting the focus, right? I mean, we've gotten to these positions by going to the trainings, working really hard, being really good as a firefighter, a paramedic, or whatever role people find themselves in, and all of a sudden you're now called to lead these other people that, and maybe not given the play-by-play manual. I didn't go to years of school to become a captain. I went to a conversation with a few people, that sort of thing.
Well, and you're not alone. The study that I read was that people who have been in supervisory positions for 20 or more years have on average 9 hours of training.
9 hours?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we put people in these positions and they struggle. I did. I remember thinking, did they cover this in college while I was skipping different classes? Like, where was I? But the whole game changes. It's very similar to the idea that an athlete gets to be the best athlete by performing, by mastering the skills of playing the game. But that does not make an athlete a good coach. Totally different skill set. And you know the game, but your contribution now becomes in getting others to play it. And so it's like just a huge transformation. Same organization, same people, but entirely different skills needed.
I've found that I feel like over and over again, I will want to set the tempo. So modeling is something we even talked about in this class. Yeah, modeling this behavior. I would like to allow other people to see this is an example. But that in itself doesn't constitute great leadership. There are certainly other components to it. I believe that reshifting how we spend our time and seeing what motivates our crew is an important thing. So often I find myself so busy that I don't have the time to dedicate to, okay, what are the people right now? It's the fire academy. What drives them? What drives the leaders, the instructors I have to succeed? What resources do they need? That sort of thing, and really taking the time to really get to know them, to foster that relationship, and make sure I'm really giving them what they need, and not running around putting fires, taking care of what I need to do at my level.
I think that's a perfect understanding of kind of where our work world is too, in that we feel like we don't have time to take care of our people. We don't have time to get to know them. We don't have time. What I would ask you to set side by side is, what is more valuable? What is on the list here, or getting to know these people? Job retention right now is gold. The way that the labor market is we need to keep and grow and retain the people that we have. And so it begs the question, side by side, what is more valuable?
Right.
Yeah.
You brought up a point today in class. The number one reason for leaving a job, right, is that your supervisor didn't have time for you.
My supervisor did not have time for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
And how many of us would say, yep.
Well, it's not surprising. It's a relationship, right? And if you think about any relationship, whether it's a marriage, it's a friendship, it's a parenting relationship, it only works when there's time and energy and attention. communication, all of those fundamentals that make relationships work are needed in the employment relationship too. The Pareto principle says that the 80-20 relationship exists in most things. 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. People always kind of raise their eyebrows at that one, like, surely that's not right. But if I tell you another example where 20% of the people cause 80% of the drama, everybody goes, well, that's true. And so the 80-20 is something that you can kind of rest into, which gives you a more realistic understanding of contributions and kind of how things play out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can certainly beat my head against the wall trying to make that even, make the contribution even across the board. And I think I've spent a lot of time trying to do that, and not very successfully all the time. So there is something to just knowing that and being okay with that a little bit, I guess.
Accepting what it is, yeah. I think I started there as well, that I wanted everybody to give an equal contribution to what I was giving. And I wanted everybody to have the mentality that 110% is what we should give. But then I came to realize that we're created differently. Some of us come in tall packages, some of us come in short packages. We come in different packages too when it comes to capacity. And it's not all the same. And so being able to accept people's ability to give different contributions really allows us to build a better team.
Absolutely. And I can think of your example and points in my own career where I've needed to back off.
Yeah.
If we wanted everyone on our team to have the same output as us at our peak performance, that sort of thing, and you said earlier it led you to a time of burnout, and I can certainly feel that within myself at different stages of my career. Going to paramedic school as well as supervising this ambulance service, ski patrolling on my days off. That was it was too busy. It was too much, and too much responsibility at that young time too. That's an unrealistic expectation of ourselves and potentially for somebody else.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It's not just people have different capacity. We have different capacity at different parts of our lives, or even different parts of our day. You know, when we start to really look at, like, we fluctuate quite a bit in what we are able and willing to do.
So how should we structure this? If we have different capacity, here we are in the afternoon, right? There is an optimal sitting here for 2 hours and having this conversation. Are our brains functioning at max capacity at that point either? Is there something to be said for that? Just how we structure our day and that sort of thing? I mean, sometimes I feel like some of the stuff we talk about is as simple as getting enough rest, proper nutrition, moving around every now and again, and having some human interaction is good for us, and it helps drive this, this good, satisfied life, I guess,
Yeah, I learned quite a bit about this summer. I took a neuroscience class from the Wharton School of Business, and the human brain is meant to focus for 25 minutes max at a time. That's it.
Okay.
And so if we really wanted to, there's something called the Pomodoro approach. And if we really wanted to increase our productivity and effectiveness, we would take a 25-minute focus period, and maybe that's a 25-minute meeting, or it's 25 minutes when we're working on something undistracted, and then you take a 5-minute break, and then another 25 minutes. And you can repeat that cycle up to 4 times, and then you need at least a 30-minute break.
Okay.
And so that's how we would be using our mind at its highest efficiency. Yeah.
How do we help people reach their max capacity where they can do what operate at that level for a sustained period of time? How do we help them find and zero in on that too? You were saying that might vary per person. How do we help them figure out what that is? Because there are some underperformers, and there's some people that I can watch almost like a train wreck, where it's like your output is just too much. That's not sustainable. And having done that myself, it's like you can see that. You can see it coming.
Well, I think it's a careful balance, because we work with adults.
Right.
And so we want to respect and honor their decision to underperform, overperform, hit the nail on the head, whatever that is. As leadership, though, I think we are responsible for systems that promote appropriate contribution. Systems like, you'll see organizations that do things like No Meeting Monday, where they provide work time for people. You see people who do flex start times and stop times so that people can get they can balance more of their work, personal life. You see things where no emails after 8 p.m., where they create systems that allow people to perform within a range. And I think sometimes you're just going to get the underperformers and the overperformers, and that's how it averages out. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I have a couple books that I brought, and you probably have some in mind too. But one that strikes me, this Getting Things Done. I don't know if you've had a chance to ever check it out, but The Art of Stress-Free Productivity. He talks. This David Allen talks about a couple different things, and his idea is when we're trying to get a lot done, our mind is a terrible device for remembering to do all these things, and it's wonderful for problem solving if we allow it to be, if we don't overwhelm it with the minutia potentially, and remembering after this we've got another interview and she said I better have a 30-minute break at least in between, and that sort of thing.
Right.
Does that ring true to you?
Totally. I think that was something that I heard a while ago that really stuck with me. Our minds are made to process, not to store. So if we are using our mind to store our meeting reminders, or so-and-so's phone number, or I need to call my kid's teacher, or whatever that is, we're taking up processing space. So that's where we need to lean into like the organizational tools, whether it's the calendar on our phone or a planner or whatever that is, so that our mind is really being used for the right stuff.
How have you taught this? You've been the operations manager. Was that your role at these different businesses? Basically, the boss. How do you teach this to your employees to help them maximize that performance, and also to find, like David Allen's talking about, that stress-free productivity? So they're not. Do we want people just to be busy? Is that the thing anymore? Or
I don't.
Yeah.
I think if you ask me how I am, I will very rarely say fine, because I think it's kind of trite, and it's not really truthful. Also, if you ask me how things are at work, I won't tell you busy, because I think that's a new 4-letter word. If someone works for me, I would much rather hear them say, how are you? And they say, I'm productive. And so getting to productive is a different path from getting to busy. And so you go about things a lot different in that mindset.
How so?
I think what are the productivity sucks in any organization? What zaps us of productivity?
Well, having to go through too many layers to get something done. So
bureaucracy. Too many obstacles. Okay. So if I'm going to be productive, I'm going to minimize within the system all those obstacles for people.
Okay.
So that they have a straight shot between an idea and the implementation.
Okay.
That would be one.
Another one I see that the station station folks will talk about, there's so much of their day that is already scripted aside from just calls. There's training, there's inspections, there's this meeting, there's that sort of thing. And so their ability to be what they feel productive on the other stuff they have going on is potentially not there.
This is a very frequent complaint that people have, myself included. There's no time to work because we go from meeting to meeting. I wish I had the numbers in front of me. I'm going to guess, and then you can edit it out if they're wrong.
Sounds good.
It was a poll where they interviewed 2,000 people, and they asked them specifically about meetings. 46% of people would prefer to endure any unpleasant activity over go to another meeting. And so they probed a little bit deeper, and they figured out that of those, it's something like 36% would rather watch paint dry. 8% would rather have a root canal than sit through another meeting.
Okay.
So potentially our meetings are leading to busy and not to productive. And so I would really look hard at that. Are we using meetings to collaborate, to bring ideas into alignment? Or are we using them to share information? And if so, maybe that's what we use our email for.
Sure.
That would be one way that I think we increase productivity.
Sure.
Is look at because so much time goes out to meetings. Third one I've come to understand is we don't all share the same parts of our day that are high productivity. Some people are morning people and some people are not.
Okay.
And so helping them to be able to structure their day so that their highest and best happens in their peak productivity, that was a game changer for me too. Yeah.
And giving them the flexibility to do that.
Yeah. And I get it. Like, we had healthcare. It's patient-person contact, patient-provider contact. Same with you guys. And you have to get pretty creative to figure out how does that flexibility show up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's really good. So another mental tool you used in our class, say I'm stuck on this problem. I've got a high stakes problem.
Yep.
Analysis paralysis is taking over. I've been thinking about it for 2 weeks. What do I do? How can I work through this problem a little bit?
Yeah. This plagued me for a long time until I learned about this tool or trick or however you'd like to say it. First, imagine for a minute like you are ziplining. Have you done that before?
I haven't.
Oh, I've done it once.
I can imagine it, yeah.
Once is enough. Yeah. But there's a point where you stand on this little tiny platform.
Okay.
And you've crawled up the pole, and now the choice is, do I crawl back down the pole or do I jump off? And you're standing on this, and it's like the absolute worst place to be because neither option looks great
Sure.
at this point. Either I have the shame of everybody watching me as I go back down the pole, or I jump, and that could be my demise.
Sure.
Who knows?
Sure.
So what happens when we have analysis paralysis is we're caught between two things. And when we can move ourselves from one to either or, we can move forward. So in a real simplistic terms, our brains make decisions in a process that looks like 1, 2, 3. The strategy that I'll give you reverses that, where you go 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
Okay, so say you have, what would be an important decision that you might have in front of you?
Oh, goodness. I can think for a lot of our folks, certainly getting married was one, but
Okay.
Should I start a podcast?
Okay, should I start?
Should that help would that help the peer support team, or am I going to pull my hair out and force my colleagues to do the same thing? That's an important decision.
Let's take the getting married one, because that one could be fun. Okay, so you're back and forth. Do I propose? Do I not? What am I going to do? Probably discussed it with 1 million people. You've listed the pros and cons. So the way that this strategy works is you make a decision, but do not tell anyone, and sit on it for 48 hours.
Okay.
So and it doesn't matter. I make a decision to
Either way.
not get married, or I make a decision to get married. What happens at the end of 48 hours is you have convinced yourself that you have either made the right decision or the wrong decision.
Okay.
You know how we experience buyer's remorse? Mm-hmm. And that's way bad if you just said, I do. And you're like, oh, geez, I shouldn't have done this. But you're putting buyer's remorse, that phenomenon, to work for you before the decision is in concrete.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And it's amazing how well it works. At the end of 48 hours, you know you're ready to move forward, or you need to go a different direction.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about the iceberg principle that you
Mm-hmm.
talked about in class a little bit. Do you want to tell about that? There's a lot more under the surface than above, right?
Yeah. So the iceberg has to do with conflict.
Right.
Conflict is interesting, and the iceberg model has been around a long time, but it talks about the idea that what we see in conflict is just the tip of the iceberg, what's above the water. And that really is people's position. Mm-hmm. You know, it's how they choose to handle conflict in the moment. Mm-hmm. The conflict is rarely about that. Mm. It's what's below the water. Mm-hmm. And that's the deeply held things that we feel like are at risk. Mm-hmm. Our values, our life experiences, mm-hmm. beliefs that we've had, mm-hmm. Biases, ways that we've been wronged that we never want to be wronged again. You know, mm-hmm. Those are the things that the conflict is really about. And so we try to address conflict at the superficial level. We grew up with the idea, just play nice and it'll be okay. Or, choose your words carefully, you know, those kind of things that had to do with it. But when you get people to talk about what's below the surface, that's where you get real conflict resolution.
Mm-hmm. I guess that would really start with getting to know our people, like you said mm-hmm. earlier. If we know them ahead of time, we can understand their perspective a little better when it does get heated, mm-hmm. What this is actually about, potentially.
Well, and those are hard things for people to share. Mm-hmm. Asking me to share what my values are, life experiences, why I might see a certain situation the way I do, I'm going to be much more inclined to do that if you and I have a relationship established over time mm-hmm. before we get to that point. Mm-hmm. So it's the small deposits that are building the trust that allow us to move through the adversity easier. Mm-hmm. You know, you join and show interest in what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Participate. Yeah. Get your hands dirty.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And you said in what they're doing, which I really like and really leads me to, you know, how do we help them be effective? Because mm-hmm. me as a leader, I can court this, or I can chart this path. I can say, this is what worked for me. I had somebody mm-hmm. reach out to me recently, mm-hmm. like, you know, what worked for you to help you become a successful paramedic? I'm struggling in that, mm-hmm. you know, to learn how to be a patient care provider. And that's mm-hmm. then you've got one example from one person who, you know, but it's really incumbent on me to learn about them, right? To mm-hmm. learn about what fuels them, what motivates them, that sort of thing. So I can meet them where they're at and help them get where they're going. That's kind of the whole nut, right?
I think so. I think it's respecting that everybody's journey is different mm-hmm. and that the support that one person, we tend to project on other people what we need. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if what I needed while I was becoming a paramedic was I needed someone to hold me accountable, then we tend to assume that other people need to be held accountable. Mm-hmm. But it's not necessarily the case. Mm-hmm. I think one of the best things we can do as leaders is to start asking more questions, not less. We believe when we become leaders that we're expected to have the answers, mm-hmm. and most of the answers. Mm-hmm. And so we stop asking questions. Mm-hmm. And if I take the person reaching out to me that wants the support in becoming a paramedic and say, how can I support you? Then we open up a conversation that's going to be helpful to them.
This other book I really appreciated also. Add it to your list,
Okay.
Hogarth and Carter. But they talk about 3 pillars that a leader needs to be successful. And they said mindfulness, selflessness, and compassion. A point you made in class today, it's driving toward this servant leadership, right? This in the mind of the leader, they talked about mindfulness, selflessness, and compassion. Those 3 pillars being what drives us to be that servant leader, right? So understanding ourselves and being aware of our own stuff, our own bias potentially we talked about, and how that's influencing what we're putting out there, but also being selfless and compassionate toward the person we're attempting to lead, and letting them chart the path a little bit, but also really putting ourselves out there a little bit for them.
Yeah, the awareness of self and awareness of others is kind of the starting spot. And from there, you have the ability to emotionally regulate in a more constructive way. And also tailor things as simple as communication or interactions with people in ways that are more productive and meaningful.
And how does that make us a servant leader? What does that mean?
I think there are different approaches to leadership, right? Servant leadership to me means that we embody that definition of leadership, where we are here to inspire performance in others. And so my opportunity, my responsibility is to serve you in a way that allows you to perform. And if that means challenging you, if it means holding you accountable, if it means encouraging you, then my service to the agency is through leading you in that direction.
You ready for our final 5 here?
Sounds like there should be a drum roll. You really need some sound effects.
Those come in post-production.
Oh, do you?
Thank you, Dirk.
Oh, okay.
Yep. A mentor you've had. It's been influential for you.
I've had several. Most recently, Dr. Frank Degree,
Okay.
that was the chair of primary care at CU Anschutz. He took me under his wing and told me several times, I don't think you have any idea what you're doing, and then helped me find resources to figure it out.
Yeah.
And he was I'm forever grateful for that relationship.
That's awesome. A book recommendation. I gave you a couple. Give me one that you think our audience...
Yeah, I
find
saw that
useful.
on the list. This might surprise you. I don't read leadership books. I read for pleasure, and I barely can keep up with my book club's
That's awesome.
recommendations.
But like we were talking about with the burnout, though, maybe that's a good thing to not eat, do leadership all day long, every day. So
Well,
we got to have some downtime. What
And
you
we
got?
can kind of cheat a little bit. I belong to this Facebook group that's like the top things you need to know from this book.
Yeah.
It's like the Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
And so you can kind of pull some good things out of that.
Yeah.
I do listen to a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
And I subscribe to different magazine feeds, but I don't read a ton of leadership books.
All right. That's good. What's a good downtime book, then?
A good downtime book. We just read Misfit by Gary Goldman. He's a comedian.
Okay.
If you were part of the 80s or 90s, it's hilarious.
Yeah. Dirk's picking up what you're putting down, I think. Yeah. All right. Give me a podcast then.
I enjoy Adam Grant's Work Life podcast.
Okay. Yep.
His tagline is helping work not suck. Which I like that one.
Perfect. Sounds similar. We're doing similar things. And then a fun way to break up the day with your team. How do you keep it from getting super stale?
I think there's 2 different levels to that. There's the personal level, like how do I keep myself focused? I think those 5-minute breaks, whether it's a walk around the block or just stepping outside from the sunshine, whatever it is. But I think we have that personal responsibility to do that. I think, and I'm sure it's true for you all as well, that this was intense work. Working with patients, high-need patients, was intense. So we had lots of distractions that were meant to just put fun in the day. We always had some contests going, whether it was a Halloween decorating contest or Final Four brackets or chili cook-off, or something that was another point of focus that kept you engaged at work, but also not intensely engaged in a level that's not healthy.
Okay, great. And then one piece of advice for the health and well-being of our coworkers.
I don't specialize in one piece of advice, obviously. I would say trust yourself and act on it. I think people are definitely the best experts in their own lives of what they need. When I coach people that are leaders, they most always have the right answer. They're just not sure how to move forward. So trust yourself, lean into it, but then take action.
All right.
Okay.
Melanie Hall, thank you so much.
Yeah.
IlluminateBusinessSolutions.com is where to find you, right?
Yes.
And the work you're doing. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on Going Interior. I hope the ideas shared here help you to adapt to the challenges of your life and career. Please share and like this episode if you find it useful. It's been produced by Dirk Klingman and Ellis Thompson of the Grand Junction Fire Department. With special thanks to 970 West Studio for sharing their space, equipment, and expertise. Take care and please join us again next week.